Donna Jakunis, and I want to walk you through the basic steps of making the sections on this slipper sock. That's from the Natural History of Knitting Club. Okay? It's made in pieces like this. Each one's just knit in a piece, but they're attached as you go. So first one I started with, which I called square one in the pattern, was this. So this is the cast on, and this piece, the colors are different, but this is just like it. So this is the cast on, and then I'm working back and forth, and then the center of each right side row I work a decrease, and then center of each wrong side row I purl that stitch instead of working garter stitch, so it makes this nice center line. If you don't want to purl a stitch, you don't have to. You just won't have those center lines. You'll just have the whole piece garter stitch. But I liked that as a design element. So at any rate, that's your first square. Number one, bottom of the foot at the toe. The second one we're going to make is the top of the foot at the toe. So we're going to flip the sock over from the bottom of the foot to the top of the foot. We're going to make this square. Like I said, the colors are different here. I reversed them by accident when I was just knitting the sample here for the video, but that doesn't matter. That's just colors. The knitting is the same. So let's look at how do we pick up stitches here. Now this doesn't necessarily have the right amount of stitches because I just made a square for a demo, but we're going to turn the square so that the cast on row is on the top. So there's the cast on row. And you can see that because as you're knitting it gets to be fewer and fewer stitches, and there was no bind off. There was just one stitch fastened off here. So here we have a lot of stitches. See how the rows are getting shorter and shorter. So we're going to go across the cast on row, and we're going to pick up one stitch in each cast on stitch along the edge. And usually I go under 2 strands of yarn when I pick up and knit stitches. But because this is on the cast on edge, it's sort of like a provisional cast on if you just go through one of the strands. You could have worked a provisional cast on here, but I wanted the squares to be kind of all the same way, and I think provisional cast ons are a pain in the butt. So we're just going to pick up and knit 1 stitch in each cast on stitch. And we'll end up with the same number of stitches that we had in the first square. So see what I'm doing here is I'm just putting the needle under that strand of yarn and then pretending that it's a regular stitch and knitting it. So some people have a little trouble getting into that and catching the yarn and pulling it through, and you can use a second needle to help. So you can stick the second needle through the loop first, like that, and now it's just like really knitting a stitch. The second needle makes it a little bit stiffer or holds that loop in place so that you can knit it. So that's one way if you have trouble. And then some people like to use a crochet hook, so you can just go into that loop with, which end's the hook? Okay, you can just go into that loop with the hook, pull it up, and then put it on the knitting needle. You can even pull up a bunch of them onto the crochet hook and then just slide them all onto the knitting needle at once. So the way you do it's not really important. When you get to the center though, the center stitch, you want to make sure that you pick up right in the middle where it makes a V, and that'll just look really tidy later on. So right in the middle, and you're going to go under more than 1 strand of yarn there. And then on the other side, just go up the same way. Okay, so it's going to look a little bit distorted when I first get it on the needle. Let me finish going up this side and I'll show you what that looks like. But all the squares are knit the same way. The only thing that's different in them is the first one you cast on, and then in the rest of them you pick up stitches in different parts of the sock so that the square is knit where you want it. Okay, so I'm almost across here, and there I am. And so I have this on this little flexi flip or flyer needles. Higher these are, so they're the flyers, but Addi flexi flips are the same. So the needle can bend and you can kind of see what the shape is going to be. What happens is the next square gets smaller and it will make like a cup or a clamshell like that. So there's square 1 and square 2. When you put it, flatten it out like that is how you wear it on your foot. Okay, so that's how you pick it up. Now just a quick overview of the actual slipper itself. So we did square 1, picked up a knit on the cast on edge to work square 2. Okay, so now what's next? We're going to look at it with the toe on the bottom, because as you work up, the toe is going to be on the bottom too. We're working this toe up. So on this square, on one of the sides will be 3, and you're going to pick up stitches 1 in each garter ridge along here, 1 in between the 2 pieces, 1 on each garter ridge along here. And then for the other side, square 4, you do the same thing. Between those 2 pieces you'll pick up. Okay, then the next square you're going to pick up on the top of the foot is square 5, and again you pick up on the side of this, the side of that, and 1 in the center, and then you work that square. Same thing for square 6. The only other one that's weird is square 7, which is the other side of the heel. So see, we have the bottom of the heel and the back of the heel. It's kind of just like the toe, except when we're ready to pick up square 7, which is the back of the heel, there's going to be only 2 sides of this square that are, I call it naked or free, because the sides, there's no cast on, there's a pickup, so that edge is not free. So you're going to pick up across here, 1 in the middle down there, and when you knit that square 7 on there, it's going to be the back of the heel. And then the next 2 are just the same as the other side ones. So this one's just like that one, this one's just like that one, and then we make 2 little ones, where instead of picking up stitches all the way down, we just start here, pick up some, 1 in the middle up, so just making 2 little squares. So that's the overview of how it works and how I picked up the stitches for the first one. If you look later and you're picking up stitches between the garter ridges, we'll just use the same swatch again just so I can show you. So you can see there's a ditch between each ridge of stitches. So you just go, and I like to go two strands of yarn, not just 1 on the edge, because it can stretch out of shape if you just go under 1. So I just go under 2, and then you pick up the stitches the same way, but you're doing it between each garter ridge. If you get to the end and you needed to, say, pick up 22 stitches and you only got 19, you can pick up 1 stitch under 2 strands, and then in one of these parts where you have the actual ridge, you can pick up in that knot to get an extra stitch. So right into that knot of the ridge you can pick up to get an extra stitch. But if you just go into the ditches between, there's 1 for each ridge. But sometimes you might be off a little bit because of how you started or something, so you can go into the knot. You'll know when you get down near the center. You can go into the knot if you need to. Okay, now I just did this backwards. You want to always make sure that this is showing when you're picking up stitches, because this is going to be the outside of the sock. So pick up when the side with this diagonal line is showing. One last thing, and someone already had a question for me, so I want to show you. When we measured the gauge, when I measured the gauge and the size of the squares on this, I measured this way for counting stitches and counting rows, and so counting stitches and counting rows, so I put it flat. But when I measured them to make the size of the sock, I calculated that on the diagonal, because if you look here, you can see 2 diagonals goes from the tip of the toe to the bottom back of the heel. So that's the length of the foot. And then if you look at it this way, you can see it's going to be 1 diagonal across the bottom of the foot, 1 diagonal across the top. So the length of the foot and the circumference is going to be approximately the same. This is a slipper sock. It's not supposed to fit really tight. So usually our foot is longer. On a lot of people, their foot is longer than it is around, or mine's pretty close to the same. So that fit fine. Now remember, this is garter stitch, so it's kind of stretchy, like sideways ribbing. So you can wet these and put them on sock blockers after you knit them and adjust the size a little bit. So that's it. just some tips for you for making the slipper sock. Let me know if you have any other questions. Happy to make videos on specific things if you need them, or I can answer questions in email or Ravelry group or on our private group for the club. Thanks!